Alright guys, today I'm going to talk about how to properly break in a two-stroke motor or a nitro motor. These motors really are two-strokes. I've been working on two-strokes pretty much my whole adult life, and no garbage can. Anyway, so I used to build two-stroke pipes. I used to build them for bikes and our midget cars and whatnot. So if anybody's wondering if I'm qualified or not to talk about it, yeah, anytime. Anytime. Alright, so this is a brand new Traxxas motor, and Traxxas has their own break-in, and I have mine. Mine's a little bit stricter, so it's pretty cut and dry. You got the glow plug in here, you got an air filter here, and your slide and whatnot for your carburetor. So we're assuming that you already have one that you're going to be putting a new motor in. So what I like to generally do is I will take some fuel, I'll take the glow plug out, and then I'll run some fuel through it, whether it's in the car or out of the car, and then I'll give it a few tugs on the pull start to make sure that that fuel gets circulated through the motor. They do put a little bit of oil in these, but not enough to my satisfaction. So what I'm going to tell you to do is, for the first full tank, you know, assuming all the settings are correct, and you can usually get those settings online or whatever, but for this needle here, generally you never have to mess with it. It's preset at the factory, but I've been finding on some of the Traxxas motors that this is a wee bit too lean, and I'll turn it out just a hair. Let's say from, if this slot is at 12 o'clock, I'll take it to 11 o'clock. And then what you can do is just pick up your idle speed right at this little screw here, because that is going to slow your idle down just a tweak. So with that being said, you really want your high speed out around 3.5 to 4 turns for break-in. So I always say no more than 200 degrees on the motor, maximum 225. A lot of these other guys will tell you 250 to 300, which I just think is ridiculously too hot for what I know about motors and metal. So the other thing is, now once you've got this installed in the car and you're going to run it, you want to do is try to just let the first tank idle out itself. All right, and most important thing is to do cycles. You want to do heat cycles. So you're going to run your first tank at idle, make sure it doesn't start screaming and the wheels start spinning. If that's the case, what you want to do to slow it down is you can richen it a little bit, which will help slow it down, and that's also going to bring the temperature down too. But you do want to keep heating the motor. Sometimes you can put some tin foil around the top of the motor if it's not getting over 150 degrees, because you do want to keep it at about 200 degrees for the break-in. And then you're idle through that first tank, like I said. Let it cool down till it's cold to the touch, and then you can start doing is what I call figure eights or roundy rounds or whatever. Put another tank in it. So my break-in is 3/4 quart of fuel. That's a lot of fuel. And in a lot of cases, if you use a race motor or one of these big red motors, something like this, you really want to run a full quart through it, no more than 1/2 to 3/4 throttle. Okay? So doesn't matter what brand motor is, they're all built the same, whether the quality's good or not. 3/4 quart of fuel to a quart of fuel is what you want to do for break-in. If you do that, if you follow my way, you will have a very strong and a very powerful motor, and you'll get a solid 5 gallons of fuel out of it, maybe 6. And most of these motors are only good for about 5 gallons of fuel. Also, when you take one of these motors out of the box, you'll notice that when I pulled this one out, that the carburetor's loose. So most of these RC cars, the equipment, when you get them, they're not 100% when they come out of the box. You got to go over everything, every nut, bolt, and screw, really, especially on any ready-to-run car. Traxxas does probably the best job out of anybody, but you still got to check things, because, you know, it could be some little Taiwanese guy or girl that's had a bad day, and they could leave something loose. I've had it with the pinion on the motors coming loose and then stripping out for brand new customers, and they get really upset. So we try to tell everybody, if they're mechanically inclined, to go over that kind of stuff. So pretty much that's the gist of it. If you run 3/4 of a quart to a full quart, no more than half, every now and then you could blip the throttle to clear it out. What happens is that the fuel starts to load up in the crankcase, and you got to get that that oil and fuel out of there to clear it out, so you can give it like full throttle for about 1.5 seconds. Now, if you don't follow my policy, as you can see on this motor here, and you might be able to see it, you can actually see daylight through the crank. Yep, that's you can literally see right through there. I'm hoping I'm getting that. But yeah, somebody didn't listen to what I said, and they did their own break-in procedure. So if you can see the light coming through, pretty cool. So that's what can happen if you don't do a correct break-in. You could blow the crankcase right apart here. In this case, it just it threw a piece of bearing or something out of there. It's not the rod. I can still see the rod in there, but it literally just blew it apart right here. Kind of weird it did it right at the mounts, but there was no damage to the car or anything, so that's how we knew that it just blew apart. But pretty much that's it, guys. Just remember, nice and easy for the first full 3/4 of a quart, no more than half the 3/4 to full throttle, no more than that, 3/4 to half throttle, I'm sorry, and you'll have a good running motor. That's it on How To at Shadow Hobbies. I'm Bob. Give us a like if you can.